Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael McCarville, and this is Fun with Fallen Flags, episode 35. So what we're going to do is we're going to build the Walthers Cornerstone series kit modern coaling tower. So let's see if you guys can see that. It also ties in with some of their engine facilities. So you'll see that there's roundhouse, turntable, other buildings for an engine facility. This is going to focus on our steam area for the engine facility. We'll have some diesel stuff to add as well, but we already have the steel water tank, so now we have this, and then we'll just need to do a sanding facility at some point. This is going to go in with a bunch of Pennsylvania Railroad and Baltimore and Ohio stuff that I have. So I think this is going to look great. I love engine facility stuff. I mean, I don't know what it is about roundhouses and coaling towers. I could build these forever. So I'm trying to be balanced. So this is a pretty big kit. If you haven't built a kit before, then I did a novice kit building episode, number 29, and it's a crossing shanty that is a very simple kit, and all I did was really follow the instructions, and I just picked some colors that I liked that I thought would fit well with the Pennsylvania Railroad stuff, and with some of the other kits that I'd already put together, so kind of going with a consistent color theme. But you get two of these in the kit. You also get a shed, again, kind of same color, and then a coal bin. So you get these three pieces, but you get a second set for all of this. So if you decide you want to have two of these or paint them as different eras, which is what I did, or give one to a buddy, whatever you want to do. So I've taken the pieces out. There are three colors. There's the clear, I guess that's a color, for the windows. I'm probably going to use acetate, but that comes with a kit. There's this color, which is the main body, and this is kind of a light tan / grayish looking. So we're going to paint. And then there's this, all the pulleys and ladders and windows and everything are in this grayish color. It's a very dark gray, almost boiler engine looking gray. So lots of pieces, especially when you get to the pulleys and everything. So the plan is for us to put together the main structure, which is this piece here with the tower, the conveyor tower that goes from the back down into the coal bin. Then there's a place for the hoppers to come in and replenish coal on the backside. And then there's a small outbuilding over here too. So you have that. So all three. I'm going to build the concrete pieces first. Make sure that there's no seams, sand where I need to, put body putty in there if I need to, fill any gaps. The last half dozen Walthers kits that I've built, I haven't had to do really much sanding at all. The seams go together really well, and there's one that I made which is the block tower, and that one went together and I didn't even paint the brick. So the seams were so tight and so good that all I did was take the plastic, hit it with a little bit of Dulko, put some material in for the mortar between the brick joints. I mean, the seams are really good. There's not really much flashing or sanding that you have to do with these kits. Every once in a while you'll come across some, but it's pretty rare. So, in days in the past when you'd have spend most of your time cleaning up the sprues, that was bad. So, and then always use a sprue cutter if you have one, to clip the pieces off, and then come back with an X-Acto knife and files and clean that stuff up too. Again, if you haven't really gone through any kits, and you haven't had an opportunity to really get some of that experience, episode 29 where I did the crossing shanties, really need to start there. If you don't want to, hey, welcome aboard, and we'll continue through here. And then the signs. I don't think I talked about these yet. I'm getting a little stack of sign decal sheets that I haven't used yet, and I know at some point I'm probably going to just sit down and mass produce signs. But this does come in with a lot of, I can't even count them all. There's probably 20, 30 signs on here. Keep out, no smoking, no coal picking, don't be stealing the coal. Clearance, hard hat area, etc. All the typical type stuff. So I've got a bunch of these, and I'm going to put this with it. And then one day I'm probably going to sit down and just do signs. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and clean up some of these pieces, and we'll get started on looking at the assembly of each of the three main structures, see how they go together, and then start talking about painting. After that, we're going to do some weathering on this. This one is going to be one of the first kits that we are going to do some substantial weathering. Lots of rust potential on here. All the metal chutes. These chutes have lines that go up over the pulleys with little weights, so that's going to be fun. And then in addition to the rust, I think this coaling tower really needs a lot more blackening on it, because this thing just gets traffic constantly. And it's been out, and if it's this old and it's got this much rust stains on it, then this area over here where it's blackened needs to be a lot darker, and especially underneath inside there. We're going to get a lot of soot and stuff like that on there too. So that being said, that's our plan going forward. So let's start getting this thing cleaned up. And I'll put some assemblies together, and then we'll take a look to see how those appear. Okay, at this point, I completed the small office building, the little add-on building. This one right here, it was basically 4 walls, a base, and a roof section, and I haven't put the windows in yet. So, as we talked about, I'm going to take this, put the roof aside. This is going to be painted at the same time as the rest of the structure. All is the same color for concrete. And then the windows will go in, the roof will go on, and the glass will go in, and the doorway. As I was going through the instruction though, it's important to note that they list part number 100. Part number 100 doesn't exist. It's actually a duplicate part 36. So kind of obvious, but if you're hunting around for part number 100, don't look for it. So the instructions actually have an error there. So now we're going on with the shed, which is this structure in the back that really you can't see. So take your time to assemble this section. There's a few panels that get glued into the some voids here in the wall. So glue those on. Office clips, paper clips from office supply stores. I have a whole tray of just those. I use these all the time. Plastic cement will set up in half an hour to an hour, and then I can work on this a little further, but until then this thing is going to be clamped until it's completely dry and the plastic is completely solidified. So I've got those 2 wall sections for this back building, and then those are the sides, they go on this base, open ends, and a roof section. So we're going to let that dry, and then I'll assemble these wall sections. So we'll have all 4 of these on here. So the glue has dried overnight, and our 2 smaller buildings are complete. The small outbuilding, a little ramp, looks like there's probably some wheeled equipment we could put in there. And then the building that has the track that runs through it for the hoppers to run through. Let's see, it would look like this. Once completed, and it'll attach onto the back of the building. So we're going to paint both of these with the concrete color, but now it's onto the rest of the structure. Okay, now that we have these two smaller buildings put together, it's time to build the main structure. So the main structure is essentially going to be two ends, two sides, this piece, which will sit in between these, and then some smaller pieces. We also have the tower that runs up the back side of it as well. So we have some additional leg pieces to clean up, and once we get these cleaned up, then it's time to assemble the main structure. So let me get those cleaned up, but you can get an idea of how the remaining concrete pieces lay out. After all of this is done and painted, then we can start assembling some of the winches and pulleys and chutes and stairs and that type of thing. We may skip over a few steps according to the instructions, because I do want to get all this stuff painted first before I start attaching pulleys, and I know the next step or two mentions gluing pulleys on, so I don't want to do that yet. I want to get all of the concrete painted and maybe a little bit of light weathering done before we ever start gluing any of the other pieces on. A couple little details that aren't real clear in the instructions. This one's kind of clear. There should be a little bit of a piece cut off of this edge here, this mounting edge. On the inside they say cut 1/8 of an inch. It's actually located right here. The reason for that is this back panel piece looks like it was molded, this one is indented, not as far as this side, so you need to clear that, and you do that by cutting off that piece. So then this piece will fit on there nice and snug. And then one thing that's not clear is, as you're building these pylons here, this piece will go here, that's clear. This piece will go here, but you'll note that there is a little small peg piece right here that fits in this hole like so. So it's really easy, if you're not paying attention, to glue this on actually upside down, and then when you get around to gluing this onto this piece here, you'll notice that that peg would be up on top. It's actually an alignment peg, which is really handy, so you want to make sure that that lines up. So each of the legs have an alignment post, so you want to make sure you grab that. So on this panel, the back panel, as well as the front panel. Okay, at this point we've got the sides put together, these structures along the bottom to give it some bulk, and then the posts. These are all separate pieces, so this is a kind of involved process, but you're looking at the last of the concrete colored pieces. We've got this here to assemble. Previously we had done the smaller buildings and then the tower pieces as well. So I'm going to go ahead and assemble these. Now when you assemble them, this piece is going to go in, and there's a little notch on the one side of it, on the, I believe the front side of it, depends on which way you're looking I guess, that corresponds with the notch here, with the front piece with the large window. So that one's going to snug in there like that. A smaller back window wall, and it's going to sit underneath this section, so the roof is going to get glued in like that, unlike the other pieces that were glued kind of over the top when we were doing the wall sections. So the instructions are pretty clear, just follow that. So to start off with, I'm going to glue it recommends gluing this piece in afterwards. So I'm going to follow that instruction, and let's go ahead and glue together. There's the front wall. Let's start there. So I've used a couple different kinds of glue already. I've used some super glue, mostly for like a quick attachment, and then I've used just a tube of regular Model plastic styrene cement. Tester's brand for this one, but I've actually used 2 different brands. And then the Tamiya cement, I've used this. I tend to use this not for large structures, but smaller pieces that I'm attaching, or ones that I can just kind of quickly zap it and use that for welding. So I'll go ahead and glue this piece on. So all these edges are beveled. Another thing, when you're gluing things together like this, like these beveled edges, it's always good to start glue a little bit along the beveled edge, and then when you put it together, put the outside edges together and then sandwich it together like that, so that if there's any glue that oozes out, which usually there's a little bit, it'll glue and ooze on the inside surface where you won't be able to see it, and the outside corner will always be nice and clean. So if not, we can wipe it off with a little bit of paper towel or cotton swab or whatever. Get a little light on here. I move these lamps around constantly while I'm building too, so I love them, and they're easy to maneuver. So just a thin bead of glue along here, not too much. It does set up pretty fast. It's not super glue or anything, but it does react with the plastic. So again, when I glue it together, hold that thought. Since this is going into a beam section, there's actually 2 edges that we're going to apply glue to. I need to get one of those little metal panel pieces that people use to glue walls together, and then the weights hold it in place at a 90-degree angle. That would be great. Never got around to getting one of those, but I think it's time. Check for any glue coming out. Place it down on the table, and we want to make sure that the bases are uniform, are consistent, that we don't have something crooked in there. So we've got 3 different pieces coming together here at the bottom, and they're 45-degree angles, so those look okay. Grab a clamp real quick. Keep that in place. Now it only keeps it together this way, not this way, so I want to do that as well. Looks pretty good. You can always come back with a little bit of putty and clean that up. I'm going to use one of these instead. The main purpose of this is to get the corners nice and snug. Like I said, this glue isn't super glue, but when it starts to react with the plastic, it does set up pretty quick. Flex it a little so it can get some of that glue down that seam. Just to be safe, I'm going to just kind of hit a couple of spots on the inside. Doesn't have to be perfect because no one's going to see it, and it's not going to hold a lot of weight or anything. So putting a ton of cement on it really isn't necessary, but that should do it. I don't really have a good way to clamp the top corner other than just hold it for a bit. But that's how we're going to do one corner. I'm going to let that set up for a few minutes, and then we will attack the other 3 corners around this building. The structure is together. It's been setting up for a little bit. I'm going to next attach this piece. Goes inside. It's going to sit in here in this roof section. And like I said earlier, there's a notch on one end, and that's important because of where the coal chutes are mounted. So they're together on one side and then apart on the other, and that's the reason for the notch. So anyway, just going to go in here like this. It's going to go up through the bottom, and you're going to flex it a little bit because you're going to want these posts that we built. There's some ridges inside here. We're going to line those up. So let me go ahead and get this attached, get this glued in place. I'm probably just going to pop this in, and then I'll just hit it with some glue on the top from above and just spot it on a few places. Basically kind of just touch welding it with the glue rather than gluing this whole edge and then getting it in there and rubbing glue all over the structure as we go. That's definitely the messy way to do it, and we're not going to do it that way. So let me glue that in, and then we'll take a look at what's left. Okay, we're running out of gray colored pieces, which is a good sign. So I finished gluing this piece in, this guy. And I also attached the end caps here on the structure. Makes it look like it's got some sort of bulkhead on the end in case an engine were to come in and derail, not hit it. So this structure's intact. So next we're going to glue these pieces together, and this is going to create the hoist house on the very back of it, the conveyor, and then it's going to glue on the back here like so. And then once that's all glued together, that's it for the concrete colored pieces. So now I've skipped a step, or 10. None of the doors, none of the windows, none of the glass got put in. But again, we're going to get all of the concrete pieces put together, and then we're going to start painting. So that's the goal. We're going to come back behind that, and then we're going to attach windows, scaffolding, things like that. But we're going to paint those as we go. So we're not going to put them on and then paint them and mask stuff off. The goal here is, with this kit that has so many pieces, to do it smart, so we attach painted pieces and then maybe do a little bit of touch up if we need to, and then that's it. So I'm going to finish this tower. We'll take a look at it real quick, and then we'll talk about our plan for weathering. Okay, so at this point I've got the tower gray pieces all together, so I'm going to paint it. And I did not attach the small building that goes on the back here where the hoppers dump coal into, mostly because I want to be able to get inside this little recess on both sides of this tower that would be difficult to paint. So anyway, I'm going to paint this, and I will have to come back and hit a couple of metal cast in pieces on here. There's a few on here on the face. There's a few on the back side. There's some ladder and stairway supports like this one here. So
not a big deal. But the more you look, the more you find. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's 10 just on that leg alone. So I am going to have to do a lot of painting. So I chose a couple different colors when I was looking, and I'm not sure which one I'm going to use, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to use Model Master Aged Concrete Flat. So this is the one I think I'm going to go with. I picked up a couple other light grays, dark grays, and things like that. I know that I don't want to keep it this color. It's way too gray. You want more of a softer color, kind of like this. Concrete is a different color for everybody you ask. But if you go out in the wild and go concrete hunting, you can see a lot of different colors. Fresh concrete is kind of a grayish, especially if it's on a brand new house construction. If it's an old sidewalk's been there for a long time, it's a more of a faded color. So we definitely want aged. So I'm going to go with this, and if I need to lighten it up a little bit, I will wash it with a kind of a white wash. Oops. I have an aged white flat that I was initially considering, but I think it's just too white. So it would make it look like a fake white painted building. So the Model Master Aged White Flat, I may actually turn into a wash if I need it. I haven't decided. I'm going to see how this first one turns out. Now these are different colors than what I did for the underpass video that I did. So that came out gray, and it had some black little highlights molded in, and I liked it, but I'm not sure if I want to keep it that color. I may wash it just a little bit more with a little bit lighter color. So I know chalk dust tends to wash out really badly, so especially lighter shades. So I may go with a lighter wash instead and try that and see how that goes. Almost like what you would expect for a winter camo on a Panzer. So that being said, we're going to go ahead and spray this. Then I'll come back and we'll take a look at the color if we're happy with it and if we want to make any modifications. Other than that, once this is painted, then I'm going to start working on all the metallic stuff. I'm going to do a little bit of weathering on here before I get all of the little metal supports here, and you'll notice that some of this underneath here, it looks good, but I want to be able to get up underneath the railing and ladders and things like that before I put the ladder on, because I don't want to try to rust the concrete here underneath the ladder while the ladder's there. I want just a rust color underneath, and then I'll put the ladder on and I'll put it, and it'll be a metallic color that is rusted but not just rust. So I want to do that in kind of some layers. So anyway, let's get this painted. We'll take a look, and then we'll start doing some of the light weathering on this thing.
Looks like it's time to paint the main structure. So it's always good to start out with some decent light on the subject. We are using aged concrete flat, a Model Master paint. Cleans up with water, but once it dries, it's not going to clean up with water, so we want to make sure we work it well. This is a big structure, so I'm going to fill this about halfway. I always use a toothpick to pour down. Stops the paint from running down the side. Use a toothpick or some metal tool, perhaps a spray gun needle that maybe isn't worth it anymore, got bent in the past or whatever. So I do like to thin it just a little bit with water. Stops it from drying, setting up. You'd use if this was a different type of paint, you'd use a retarder of some sort. So. All right. Okay, it's showtime. Let's paint this guy. Get this thing painted and we can do some more work to it. But we're kind of dead in the water until we get this guy painted. And then we need to paint the structure in the back. So we're going for a look kind of like that. Yeah, aged concrete is what this is called. So, and again, this is what we started with. So we'll paint that back structure next. Okay, so at this point we have completed spray painting the main structure, the smaller building that attaches on the back, and then the outbuilding that we have, little office building. So now that we've got this little recess here painted, we can attach this. But we're going to go back and look at the instructions and find out what we left off, because we did skip a few steps. Most of the steps we skipped were all of the chutes and railing and doors and windows and that type of thing. So we're going to need to paint those, add those, and then do some weathering on the concrete structure. So where I can, I'm going to try to do some of the weathering in advance of attaching those pieces. It'd just be easier for me to weather if there's a scaffold running across here and braces that brace that. Right now I can get to all of that surface, but once I start attaching pieces, especially like ladder sections, it's going to be difficult for me to get underneath those. So before I get started with any of that, however, there's all these little metal cast-in pieces, and there are some stairway supports like these two that I need to paint. Those are all metal, so I'm going to paint those, weather underneath them just a little bit, and then start looking at the rest of it. Now don't forget, we also have to weather with smoke, cinders, etc. This surface underneath here, and then the back surface as well, where the engines would roll through. So we're going to do that now, because we want to hit that while we can get to these surfaces and they're not blocked by scaffolding, and we're trying to spray down and around pieces that are going to be added on. So let me get these small pieces painted. Now I do want to talk about how I'm going to paint those. It's certainly fine to go through and paint these pieces by hand. We really don't want to mask these off to spray them, because then we're going to have to mask the entire structure But what I will do is I'm a big fan of taking just painter's tape, cutting it into strips, and then laying it down around the edges that I don't want to touch with paint. So I'm going to hit those with, I'm going to pre-mask them, then hand paint them, and then pull that off, and then do a little rust and staining and stuff on the concrete itself. So it's okay to mask it, but you don't necessarily have to mask it for spray painting. You can mask it just because you want to be careful to get nice, precise, crisp lines. So I've done that in a few of the previous episodes. Most recently was the last episode that I did was the Rio Grande Southern caboose. I masked a lot of these silver pieces off from the rest of the structure. You can see these here. They're raised up, but underneath them, if you know, a little slip, you get some silver on that surface. So I put masking tape around the outside and underneath the railing, underneath this little hand piece right here, just so that the silver paint was only going to go on this handrail piece that was exposed, just like these and the little side little steps that come up off the caboose. I wanted to make sure that none of that stuff got painted, so I masked it off and then I hand painted it. I didn't spray it. So anyway, let's get started painting some of these little metal pieces, and then we will take a look at all of the additional pieces that we skipped.
Okay, quick update. So I managed to get all of the windows and doors painted, just a basic flat black. Go back and add a little bit of rust here and there, but they have been painted and they are mounted inside. And this one's actually interesting because if I put glass on the back side here, you're going to notice these big black windows with a piece of glass overhanging some of this piece right here. So I'm going to leave the glass out of these windows. When they made the casting for the coal bunker, they made recesses for the windows to fit into. They didn't do that on the rest of the structure. So they actually don't look too bad, but you do have to paint the backside of them too. So I'm going to leave the glass out of these. I don't know if I'll go back and change that in the future. I don't think I will, but I'm also going to get this fairly dusty with coal dust and stuff inside it too. So I don't think you're really going to notice it. The other structures, I'll put glass windows in them. I may smog them up a little bit. So as I was going through and starting to mask off some of these pieces, the spray coat that I put on here is really light, so as far as thickness. So what I was unable to do was to mask these off. I masked off the first couple, the first little windows up here, and once I masked these off, I was aligning it, and I had to peel it up a little bit and lay it back down to get it a little more accurate on the bottom of the window. It peeled the paint up really easily. So at that point, I had to stop and hand paint all of the details with a very fine brush. So all that's been done. So the details are painted, the windows are painted, and I have two more to put in back here, and then we can start with all of the ladders and the little coal chutes that come down here. So as you can see, some of these have little holes where we're going to mount ladders, so and railing and that type of thing. So I'm going to go ahead and get some rust coloration on here before I put the ladders on. So that's actually next, is to do some weathering to this structure. But other than that, it's coming along pretty well. I like it.
Okay, so quick update. So I have finished with most of the weathering on this structure. You can see that I've actually used a couple different types. So right here you can see that I've done a little bit of rust coloration, and that is with chalk, and I use a couple of packs of different colored chalk, rust over here, and then the black and grays all the way up through white for various areas. So I used a spray gun to cover this area in general, but when it got down here, I needed it to be even darker, so I used a little bit of chalk and I varied between black and some dark grays. So you'll notice that there is a little bit of variation on the color in here. Also around the base, you can see where the coal chutes are going to sit. There's some discoloration here. The thing about the weathering phase is it's so easy to overdo it, and you can always come back and add a little bit more, but it's really hard to take it away. As a matter of fact, on the back side, I used a spray gun and chalk, both methods back here. Initially I had overdone it and it had gotten a lot darker up the wall than I wanted it to be. So this whole section actually got painted the aged concrete color a second time to cover everything. And then I came back and then got it a little less aged and grimy. So I like it a lot better. And then underneath has been done as well. Some of the interior pieces as well, like down in here. You can see where the chutes are going to sit. There's a little bit of discoloration in there as well. And then just to give you an idea of what it takes to color this, I left this hole here not really colored. And you really just take some chalk dust and pick a color. It's easy to play around with it because you can just wipe it off when you're done. And then once you're finished and you like it, we're going to coat it with Dulko. So you can see now it kind of matches up a little bit. And again, if I decide that I really don't want that color, I can kind of tone it down and wipe it off. And it's just dust. So if we wanted to, we could just remove it completely. But that looks pretty good. And now the two they match a little bit better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shoot this with just a quick shot of dull coat right here to seal this in. And then I can start placing all of the ladders and scaffolding and coal chutes and everything. But that's essentially what it's going to look like before we put those pieces on. And once we add those, we'll want to do some weathering on those pieces as we go, so that that we don't have to come back and weather on top of adding some of these little pulleys and stuff. I'll paint these and do a little bit of dry brushing on those as well. So as far as the windows go, they were painted, and you can see that I painted the front sides of them and the door kind of a black. The windows on this building got a couple different types of treatment. So on this smaller structure, I wanted these to be fairly clear office type windows. So I just cut some acetate so they're very clear and shiny, and you can see the gunk that I used inside. I want to hide that. So once I get this on top, it'll be fairly dark and you won't be able to see any of that unless you get an unlucky angle like that with some light coming in. I could paint that over if I wanted to, but I don't really feel the need because this building's probably going to be sitting in the back of this area anyway. So I did put a little bit of weathering on the walls. You can see on the edges of the windowsills, there's a little bit of just drip marks down the concrete. I put a little bit of tone on top of the windowsill edges too, just to make them a little bit darker. And then the ramp going into this small office building, I wanted it to look like there was some machinery that was pushed in and out and scraped So you can see it got a little layer of chalk dust, a couple different colors. I used a brown, a rust, and a black on there. So, and then again on the back side there's a little bit of a wash on the back. But again, I did this in a couple different layers too. So, and then the roof was just kind of a quick chalk dust weathering on that. So looks okay. But again, I didn't spend a ton of time on this little building because I'm not even sure I'm going to use it or where I'm going to use it. But the glass is in that one. The rest of this structure, I'm using the plastic pieces that came with the kit. So you notice that these are just the, I'm not using acetate because I don't necessarily want these windows to appear like an office building. So, but I did paint the backside a gloss black, and I almost completely covered it. So if there is any light inside, it'll be a little translucent. So you'll see that as the windows go on, like up here, they'll be very, very dark. And the inside of this building is going to be a lot of coal dust. So when I finish adding these, you'll see a glass window on the outside, but it's going to be fairly opaque. So this building here, which is, this piece is actually done now. These windows, like I said earlier, I'm not putting anything on these. I'm just going to leave these open. Partly because I think that, I'm not sure they would have put glass in there anyway. But even if they did, I would see the back piece of plastic right here. And I don't really care for that. So there's two little girders that run down the length of this. I did some weathering, airbrush, and some chalk dust, and also India ink wash in here. I kind of did a little bit of everything in there. So you'll notice that there's, that's dark. This is going to have a piece of rail, a piece of track that comes out, and then it's going to go over here, and the roadbed's going to be raised up, so I'm not going to even see this part of the wall at all. So other than that, the roof of this building is done as well. I did this in a couple different layers, so you'll notice that there's some chalk dust on here that got covered with Dulko, but I used black and a lot of streaking. How I did that was essentially just put the chalk dust on there in a few different spots and then streak it down with a dry brush until I got to the point where I liked it, and then I coated it with black, I coated the black layer with Dulko. Then I added a few little spots of some lighter brownish reddish rust color in a few spots, and then I coated that, and then I did a couple of spots to lighten it up. So what you end up with is 3 layers of chalk dust, but you'll notice that the roof actually looks pretty good. And again, this is going to be on the back of the structure, so I'm not sure how much this is going to be seen, but as of right now, it looks pretty decent. I can't finish the roof on this structure yet. I got to get these windows in, so I'm going to add the windows, and then I'm going to put the roof section in. So this was a single piece. These roof sections are, there's a piece here, one there, and then 2 on top. So I have several pieces to put on still, and there's another piece back here that's going to sit. Let me put this guy on there so you can see it. Like that. So there's going to be another roof section back here. So this one I definitely want to match up with how I weathered this back piece. And these roof sections on here, they're all going to be the same color and the same weathering type. So they should all come out like that. Now there's a couple of different places that I found some gaps, and I put some Model Putty on. And I'm going to do the same when I get up here. So the roof is going to get glued on here. It's going to be pre-painted that gray. It's basically a medium primer gray. it's going to get put on here. This one's going to get put on here, and there'll be a seam down the center. So I'm going to, even though this is painted, I'm going to go ahead and putty down the center and make sure that seam is nice and tight. And then when I'm happy with it, I'll mask some of that off, and then I'll just do a real quick shot of gray primer down across the very top of this roof section. Also, where this meets, this section of roof is going to meet this section. So I want to make sure all those roof seams aren't visible. And then obviously up here, we've got the peak of this roof, these two sections. There's two sections that go up there. Same thing there. We want to glue in place, pre-paint them, glue them in place, a little bit of putty, and then go ahead and hit it again with some of the same gray, and then I can start the weathering process on the roof, and then hopefully the roofs will end up looking just like this one. So you'll see that I had colored this one a couple different ways. Oh, and a little bit of India ink wash on this just to take the brightness off the gray, and also make it a little more uneven. So this thing actually got, I think, 4 different layers of weathering, and I do like to build it up in stages because then I know I'm happy with it. Then I don't have to repaint it like I did the back wall of the structure. So quick note on the glue I've used as far as the acetate. I'm using Walthers goo for that. All the plastic cement is just regular plastic glue. I use super glue sometimes when I'm happy with the location. It's not going to get too much use. And let's see. So a couple of putties that I've used. On this model, I'm using the Tamiya putty. I like the way it's a little more fluid, and I like the way it goes into some of the cracks. It gives me a little bit better working time. The problem with the Squadron products now is what it's called. The Squadron Shops putty, what they say is they really recommend that you don't use this on styrene in a large amount because it will melt the plastic. And I've done that before. I've melted the plastic. So pretty much the Tamiya putty is what I'm going to use unless I need something maybe that isn't going to be seen, or I don't really care about the texture, or I'm trying to fill a large void, then perhaps I would use this. So anyway, next step is to put the last couple of windows in place. I want to finish these, glue these 6 in, and then we can glue the roof sections on, a little putty, final touch up of the gray, and then we're going to weather it just like this. So once this is done to all the roof sections, we'll jump back in and I'll take a look at what the remaining steps that we have for all of the ladders and pulleys and all that stuff. Okay, so at this point, like I said, we were going to attach the roof sections and weather them so that they matched this roof section. And we are pretty much finished. So you can see the roof section here, as well as the top one. They're finished, and this back section has been attached, and this small roof section here has been added as well to blend them in. The seams between the panels look good. And there's a little bit of black, a little bit of gray, a little bit of real light gray, and some rust section. But really, really mild. So overall, I like the way it turned out. So we're going to finish all the external hardware, the chutes, the stairs and ladders. And we'll get started on that now. We've got a lot of components that we're putting together at this point. So I've got the chutes on here. These snap in, these need to be painted, and then we're going to weather those. So right now I'm weathering the the pulleys and some of the mount plates that go underneath in the openings. So quick shot of flat black, and then you can see on the pulleys here a little bit of tester's rust, dry brushing. And then after that, just to bring out some of the highlights, take a little bit of chalk dust. Doesn't take very much. And rust. You're going to add a little bit to the plate itself. And it takes even less of the rust. Just a few little shavings on there. Once that's done, then we're going to just kind of spread it around. You'll see that the rust really kind of disappears because I'm putting it on pretty light. And I have the pieces just affixed to painter's tape. I use a lot of painter's tape for stuff like this. You can use white, but when I've used white it tends to disappear in the dull coat that I'm going to put on. But the grays don't seem to have as big a problem. Black doesn't move at all. Pretty much what you put it on, what it looks like, is what it's going to look like when you're finished. So at that point we've got a little bit of black, and we've got gray and rust on top of it. I'm going to shoot it with dull coat and then move on to the next piece. So we're going to do a little bit more rust on the chutes. They're going to get a lot of action of wearing some of this down here as the coal runs through. So it's going to see a little bit more rust inside these, and a lot of black coal dust. But I'm going to use a kind of a lighter color to simulate the coal dust. Paint it black, a little bit of coal dust with a dark gray, and then definitely some rust. And I'll probably do a little bit of dry brushing on here too. Again, a lot of this happens in layers. The spray paint layer, the dry brush layer, the chalk dust layer, at least one layer of that. So, and they should come out looking pretty close to what these look like here. Okay, so the paint and weathering on the coal chutes are completed. These two are going to sit on the outside wall facing you when you're looking at the front of the building. These four are the ones that go underneath the coaling tower on the two tracks. So I painted these differently. I painted these a little bit darker because they're going to be out and exposed and you're going to be able to see them. And then there's a flat black paint with some rust powder and a little bit of black powder for chalk, and then dull coat. These, since they're going to be underneath, I painted them just a little bit lighter, so they're a medium gray, but then they got a heavy coating of black chalk dust and rust underneath. So you can see these colors are a little more vibrant, but they're also going to be in shadow, so I want them to stand out a little bit more. And these here are going to be exposed, so you're going to be able to see them really easily. So going forward, I kind of use this as a test to see what I wanted to do when I was going to paint all of the railings and the ladders, etc. So I think I'm going to go with this method and keep this uniform with the coal chutes and the railings, etc. on the outside, unless it's something maybe that's hidden. But I'm pretty sure everything that's left is going to get painted this style. I'm probably going to do a little bit more rust on the flat surfaces, any place that water would collect. Other than that, flat black and some rust powder with maybe a little bit of black chalk dust and maybe a dark gray chalk dust to give it a little bit of tonal change. So, but other than that, I'm going to mount these, and then we're going to go ahead and get started on all of the ladders and railings. Okay, I've got the coal chutes glued on here. I've left the pieces that hinge, let's see, these pieces off. These just snap on, so I don't break these off. I'm leaving these off for right now. I'll put those on when I start doing the rigging for those, because there's steps that we have to go through to rig all of those up. So anyway, we're going to come back to that. So I'm noticing that as you glue these wheels on here, you'll notice that they are lined up with the pulleys. There's nothing that attaches the wheel to the pulley. As a matter of fact, on the box art, you'll see that there isn't even a pulley pictured on either of those two. So I know this is a pre-production photo, but the pulleys are what is going to be used on the inside of these chutes. So they're going to correspond to that. You'll notice there's a wheel there. It's going to go towards the back. So the idea is that this wheel is cranked and it moves the chute up and down by way of these lines and the associated counterweights. So in theory, you go over here, you crank this, and it moves the chute up and down by dropping these counterweights or pulling them up. Makes sense, right? Except there's no pulleys on the back of these, but on the model there actually is. So you can see there's pulleys here. So what we're going to do is add something that's actually missing from the model. I don't know if it was omitted or if they didn't want to include it. So I've drilled this hole out here, and I've drilled into this pulley a little ways. I've inserted a piece of brass wire. So this piece of brass wire can just come out. I haven't glued it in yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this piece of brass wire, I've drilled it out with a number 68 bit, just to give it enough room around it that when I put a dab of super glue in there, it holds the brass wire in place. And then I've drilled about halfway through this pulley. So this brass wire is going to go back in. I'm going to hit it with a shot of super glue here, put it in, then follow up with a little shot of super glue here. Now, the wheels, that when they go on, there's a little nub on the back side of it, and that needs to go into this hole. So for here, the wheel's going to go here, the nub's going to stick into the hole. So the brass wire that I cut is just a little bit shorter than this section here. It still will fit all the way in, and it'll remain inside this. But you can see by the thickness of this here that I can cut about maybe a millimeter or two off the brass wire. It'll still be in this hole, but when the wheel gets put on, there'll still be enough of a hole here that the wheel can actually go on. So I'm going to do that for this right here. I'm also going to do it for every place that you see one of these brackets. So you see a bracket here, I'm going to drill in through here, and then make sure that this is attached. I'm going to do one over here. This one here on the bottom is going to go all the way over here. So that one's going to be fairly long, so I don't know if I can get the drill bit. The nice thing about this hole is I can use the drill, and I can drill in through this piece, and then I can get all the way into this by having the drill. Let's see if you can see this, because the drill will be long enough to go all the way through the pulley if I wanted to. But when I get over here, I can only drill in through that hole, so I only need to go through here. And then I'm going to have to come in here and try to drill this as straight as I can, just enough to get the wire to insert there, and then glue on it. So up here won't be a problem. I'll go into that one. Over here on this one, and you got a pretty big gap there, so I'm going to drill through on this one, and then I'm going to try to just get into this one a little bit, and that's probably going to be as far as I'm going to go with this rod. Just go over there. And let's see what's on the back side. Got another pulley hiding over here, so that'll be exactly the same as the front. And yeah, and there's one on this side too. So again, this one's this size drill. This length of the drill bit will be fine. I can get through here, and you just want to make sure as you drill through and you keep this really straight so you don't snap off any of this fixture as you're going to put a little bit of an indent onto this pulley as well. So I hope that's clear. It looks like they omitted a piece because it doesn't make sense that they have these wheels here and really nothing attaching them to the pulley system at all. So, and no intention of gears or anything that run through. So it's going to be a really, really minor detail, but once you see that it actually has another piece of fine detail connecting these guys, it's going to look great. So we're going to go ahead and get started on that. I'm going to drill all those out, and then I'm going to glue those in, and then come back behind them with the wheels and get the wheels added. So that'll be the next step. Okay, so we've got all the pulleys drilled through. I used a number 68 bit on the Pin Vise. So these are drilled through, these are drilled through. So we have a wire that goes from the wheel through both of these, and then down here over to this one, over to the pulley. So I used a 68. That was actually a little bit bigger, but I wanted there to be enough of a space around the wire for the super glue to grab. So I used just a slightly larger one. I think if I were to do it again, I would do the exact same bit. So I would recommend doing something like that. Also, the pulleys in the back, these two here, this one and this one in the back, those are finished as well. So the wire's through, it's painted, and the wheel has been attached and painted. I'm going to do a little bit of dry brush of rust on here, but not very much. So also another item that has been added, so we've got these little platforms that are glued on, and when you glue these on, you want to just dab a little bit of super glue underneath and just do it one at a time so you get a nice even fit. The key to getting these to look good is to make sure that the corners match up and then go from there on these pieces. This is one floor piece and one floor piece, so there's actually a gap, so it breaks up. But do the corners, like on this one as well. Do the corners first, mesh those up, and then make sure that it's on the platform nice and square. So I do a lot of test fitting on this, so just a little tip for that. These are all painted a flat black, and then a dusting of rust colored powder, just like I've used for up here. Color's all consistent. And then a shot of Dulko. So this platform, this one, and this little one over here, that platform have all been treated the same. And then it's pretty much stairs at this point. We'll do these pieces last. So other than that, we've got 4 sets of stairs, glued those together. Again, just do a lot of test fit, make sure you clean up the sprue, and there is a little bit of flashing on this, but not very much. So overall, it's pretty good. Domino! Last but not least is this monster. This is the stairway that goes around the top. starts on this door here, goes down this, over to this doorway, rests on that bracket, comes down here, rests on that bracket, down here to these little supports, and then down. So this thing is kind of a beast to put together. I decided to build it in one piece and then attach it. You could probably build these in assemblies, but I wanted to make sure that each of the corners matched up. You can see there's a lot of places where you could start to go astray a little bit, and by the time you get to the bottom, it's not going to work. So I just want everything to be trued up. So I built it this way, and you can see, let me see if I can do this. Just one hand. Okay, so I had to put the phone down. I could not do that with just one hand. There's a little concrete block at the bottom that goes on here, and then the stairway goes up here all the way around the back side, and then up to the door here. So follow it around. So rests on these two braces, and then up on the top. So I built this all in one piece. So what I'm going to do is I will paint this. I'm going to put a little more rust colored dust on it, a lot like what we have here. It'll all look the same. It's going to be painted flat black. I'll paint this whole thing. I'm going to put rust colored dust on, powder on here, and then once that's on, I'll hit it with Dulko, and then I'm going to glue it on. So I'm going to start up here. I'm going to make sure that this thing matches the holes perfectly. Glue that in, let that dry, then I'll go down to the next spot right here, glue that point on, and all the way down to the bottom, to there, to there. So it is a little tricky getting this whole thing together. There's probably, I don't know, there's 4 pieces per flight of stairs. The stairs, the railing, and then a platform. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I don't know, I lost count. So anyway, there's a lot of pieces to this thing. It does take a while to put together, especially if you want to make sure you fit it and then glue and then let that dry and then fit it and glue. I did a lot of little pieces. I probably did 8 different sessions for gluing this whole thing together, just because I wanted to make sure it was all perfectly dry on one flight before I tried to start attaching the next flight. So it's really easy to twist this thing and get little bends and stuff in it. So cut it out, make sure you get any of the flashing off and any of the remnants of the sprue cleaned up, and then just take it real slow and it will work out great. But it does take some time to do. So just when you think you're getting close to the end, you have to do the stairs. So I'm going to paint that, get that weathered. I'm going to do the same with these. These have been painted. I'm going to weather these and then glue these on. There's 4 of them. They all go in the 4 points around the bottom. And then once all of that's done, I will come back and we will do the rigging for the chutes as the last piece. So we're getting close.
You may need to patch some of the railing pieces. I noticed at the very top there was a few little pieces missing, so I patched that with balsa wood, but if you happen to snap any off, you may want to try this as well. I just attached this with super glue.
Okay, so the pulley system and the coal chutes have been completed. The lines run up through the pulleys and then down to the coal chutes and then down to the counterweights that are underneath here at this point. So I used a finer thread than what comes in the kit. The thread that came in the kit, I didn't want to drill out all the holes, being that the holes were so small on the coal chutes. So I decided to just find a thinner thread. I just found it in a sewing box. It wasn't anything special, but it definitely wasn't as thick. Use that thread for all the counterweights and pulleys. So there's 4 coal chutes on the inside here too. You can see they're all in the upright position. I definitely don't want them to hang down and hit any of the steam engines that come through. And then what we didn't see last time was the stairway. All of that has been attached. You can see here in the back shot over here, you can see it running up the back side. And let me move around the other side. You can see the stairway going up and then down around the back side there too.
Okay, well, that's going to do it for this project. It's complete, and I really don't have anything else to do to it. I haven't decided exactly what I'm going to do as far as mounting it. I think I'm going to mount it maybe just straight to the layout, and I'm not sure if I'm going to put it on a base at all. It's going to probably be pretty big if I did, so I may just end up mounting it to a foam section that I can remove it somewhat easily if I had to. I just wouldn't want to tear off the stairs if I was going to move it around. So overall, I'm pretty happy with it. I will say that the ladders and stair section is a lot more time intensive than I anticipated, so I would take that into account. Also, all of the pulleys and the rigging, that's very, very delicate work. So if you decided you just want to put the chutes on, that would be a way to save some time. But it does look really good with the lines on it. That being said, I would plan on several hours to do that because it's very delicate work running the lines up and through the pulleys and down to the counterweights and then down to the chutes themselves. It does take a long time to thread all that, and then depending on how you're going to rig it, if you want them to move, you could probably do that. If you want to fix them in place, which is what I did, then I just don't want to have any operational problems down the road. So plan for some time there. Just because you get the structure built doesn't mean that you're close to the end. You've got all of the stairway and then all of the rigging phases to go through as well. So it's almost like once you build the basic structure, you're about a third of the way there. You're not even close to the end. So, but it's worth taking time. It is definitely a great fixture. It's going to be an eye catcher on the layout, and I'm excited to mount it and have multiple tracks. I'm probably going to have 4 tracks for this structure alone. One in the front for these coal chutes, because I got to have this one now because I added those. The 2 underneath, and then the location for the coal to come in to this this hopper area where the hoppers will run in. It's elevated a little bit, so there'll be a very slight increase in elevation. Shouldn't be a big deal. You don't have to worry about grades or anything, even if you made it fairly steep, because all you're going to do is push a car or 2 up there. I haven't decided if I'm actually going to run a line that runs up into this coal dump area and then around so that it links, or if it's just going to be a stub end and not worry about pushing anything back through there. I think I'm probably just going to make it a stub. Otherwise, I've got to dedicate 2 switches to it and then worry about where it's going to come out and all that. So very happy with it. I'm looking forward to the next project, but for right now, this one's done. It's been going on a lot longer than I thought it was, and I appreciate everybody watching. If you made it this far to the end, you're probably planning on building this, or else you've already started construction on it, and I wish you guys good luck. Reach out to me if you have any questions. I'd be more than happy to answer them. Also, if you are viewing this video, please feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel. This is number 35. I've already got number 36 and number 37 done. They got done after this one, largely because I didn't think this one was going to take as long as it did. So I was finishing ones past it. So then I go back to it and I'm like, oh, let's go do some more stairs. The stair section is very time consuming. Anyway, subscribe to my channel. Like any of the videos that you like. Give me comments and reach out to me. I'm going to go clean up my workspace, give it a good cleaning before I start my next project. And I will see you guys out there on episode 38, I think. I'm losing count. So yeah, I believe it's 38. So thanks, and see you guys next time. Take care.